Hello, everyone. Glad to see you back at Silver Tears Tarot, and a warm welcome to those of you who are joining for the first time. So today we're going to look at the changes that are coming out with the new moon. That's going to happen a little before, I guess, 5 p.m. on September 25th, where I am. So the moon always pulls on me a lot and makes me feel a great deal. So I thought I would just go ahead and pull a few cards to see what it means for the collective during this time of the new moon. And so as usual, it's a general reading for all signs. The readings are also timeless, so you'll be more drawn to readings if it's the right time for you to hear them. And so even though I'm pulling this at the time of the new moon, you might be compelled to listen to it at a different time later on. So it may be that there are messages in there for you specifically at that time. And you know, the other thing is it won't resonate with everyone. But if it does with you, I would just say please like, share, and subscribe so that you can stick with me. And that way I can figure out which of the videos you guys want more of. So going ahead and getting started on this one, I'm going to read for you from the Tarot del Toro today, and then we're going to clarify with the Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot. These decks work really, really well together. So the first thing that we're looking at is kind of that purpose for the reading. And so we know that we're looking to see the energies around this new moon. However, what's the big idea? What's the main the main point of what we're going to be looking at in this reading? So we've got the King of Blades, and just grabbing that top card. I typically just grab the top card unless I feel drawn to pull more than one, even if more than one turns over. So we've got the King of Blades, and that's like the King of Swords, but it's in the reverse. So what's sticking out to me about this card is kind of a tendency to not look at the whole situation. So this is almost kind of a short-sightedness that we're seeing here. Not that a person is necessarily short-sighted, but it's possible they have made a decision that they could consider to be short-sighted. So we'll look a little bit more into that when we go to clarify here in a minute. But for now, it looks like we're starting with somebody not looking at a whole situation, or maybe just not taking that step back when they do look at a situation. And so to get kind of a little bit more about the setting, and this is kind of the weather for the reading. So it's the feel, and we have, just taking that top card again, the Hierophant in reverse. So things are kind of off script, I want to say. So in some ways, the Hierophant represents guidance and spiritual guidance. It can be, you know, it was the Pope in the original tarot. You'll have marriage sometimes be represented by this, or tradition. And in this case, it's kind of it's a little bit like the feeling of something being non-traditional, but more than that, it's that feeling of being not having that guidance. And that's what I mean by being off script. So it's a little bit, something's unorthodox here or not comfortable. And, you know, there's not necessarily anything wrong with it, but somebody has got a situation here where they're not looking at a full picture. And then we have the weather is sort of unorthodox around the situation. So next I want to ask what's sticking out the most about this situation. And we have the Ace of Goblets that's come out here. It's coming out in reverse. And so what I'm seeing here is that there's kind of a lack of love, or maybe a retraction of love. Ace of Goblets is like the Ace of Cups. And in the upright, it's new love. It is new emotion in any case. What we have here is emotion that's being retracted. And so maybe relevant to the fact that there's something sort of non-traditional going on here, or just something that isn't quite following the script. And then over here we have, of course, that situation where somebody's not looking at the big picture. So we also have the thing that's sticking out the most about the situation is that there is, I don't know if it's a loss of love, or it feels more like a retraction of emotion. Something could just be being, somebody's using their head way more than their heart going forward on something. But it also feels like if it's related to this retraction, or if this retraction is related also to this not looking at the big picture, that could be a tough combination. So let's dig a little bit deeper and just kind of see what else the universe wants to tell us about this situation. And we've got the Strength card that's come up. Strength card doesn't come out in a vacuum. It's always going to be there to let you know that there is some fear that you need to push off of, or that there's fear in the picture otherwise that the strength is necessary to overcome. It could also be an indication of kind of what's happening in what a characteristic that somebody has. So just thinking of exceptions to that. But in this case, it is that there's fear to push off of. This is the more that we wanted to understand about the situation. So there's fear here that's probably narrowing this person's vision. We just had this in a recent reading, where this person, when they get stressed out, they are unable to take that broader step back and take a look at the big picture, and they sort of seize up and look at the small picture, and that's kind of what's happening here. Maybe it's what's causing them to retract. So there is some retraction. There is also this strength, and so it's not a completely consistent reaction. You may be seeing some back and forth sort of response around a situation that's maybe non-traditional or otherwise not following the script. So let's look for some hidden energies here and get a feel for things that may not be evident. So we've got a lot of cards on the table that are, it's people in the situation are probably aware of these circumstances for the most part, but let's look into something where maybe it's not as obvious. So we've got the Knight of Blades here in reverse. And if we look at this one in the upright, the Knight of Blades, and so this is going to be like the Knight of Swords. It's a decisive forward movement. But what we have here is sort of, not a decisive forward movement. Instead, it's a little bit sneaky. There is some sort of sneakiness going on here, and it may not be especially harmful. Could be like, sometimes you'll see the Knight of Swords in the reverse, or even in the upright. You'll see it. Sometimes people will talk about that being a spying energy. And I don't often see that when it comes up when the Knight of Swords comes up or the Knight of Blades comes up. But in this case, I almost do sort of get that feel. So there may be some spying or sneaky sort of thing going on. Whatever it is, it's not something that people want to be public knowledge. Whoever this is that's not looking at the big picture, who is retracting and pulling their emotion out of a situation, is still very much involved in the situation and still looking at it, but doesn't really want to be seen as doing that, possibly because, and I often find these two cards playing off each other very strongly, but possibly because of the non-traditional nature of the situation or the relationship or what have you. So let's see what's going to happen next. And when I say next, I don't mean here is the final answer. This is what's going to happen in the end, because we've got a lot that's likely to happen there. But what is in the energy that is most likely to happen as we go forward? What is that sort of next step? And this is all within that new moon sort of time frame. And so we're looking to see what sort of energies are arising here. So it really is what is happening next. And this is what the energies are favorable for. Then you pour in your own free will, and that's more than one card, anyone else's free will into the situation. And that's where you get your interesting outcomes. But let's see what sort of energy is coming for you next with this new moon. Sometimes, let's see, we've got the Ace of Blades. Okay, so just taking that top card again, and Ace of Blades in the reverse. So there's going to be a truth that needs to come out that doesn't have the opportunity to come out. So that's what's happening. It's like we're getting a little bit deeper into whatever the situation is here during the time of this new moon. So we have a person who is maybe not looking at a whole situation, or not looking at a situation as a whole. They are instead looking at more of a narrow slice of the situation and maybe making their decisions based on that. But it's based on them being strong. This is a coping mechanism, being strong because they're up against some kind of fears about a non-traditional situation. And it's causing them to both retract their emotion from the situation as it's another defense mechanism. It's also causing them to sort of almost hide behind a rock and sort of peer out of there and see what's happening. So if it's a person who has retracted their emotion and the way they're handling things with you, they are likely still watching to kind of see how it lands, and maybe aren't sure about how they want to address this and what to do next. But the next thing that they have on their agenda is kind of to continue to obscure the truth, or I don't want it to necessarily sound like it's that intentional, because I'm not necessarily convinced that it is, but there is obscurance of the truth, possibly even from themselves. And so basically it's kind of going farther down this rabbit hole where they haven't looked at the big picture and they're retracting some emotion. But let's go ahead and get some clarification. So again, we're clarifying with the Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot, and I want to start with the King of Blades in the reverse up here in the first position. So that was what's the big idea for this reading? You know, we have the King of Blades. We have a person who's not they're not utilizing their entire logic for this. So the King of Swords, the King of Blades, is a logical king, but his downside is that sometimes he can be a little bit nearsighted or short-sighted. So what we have come out with that is the King of on top of the King of Blades is Justice in reverse and the Eight of Wands in reverse. So we have something that isn't quite right. Could be a court situation, doesn't necessarily feel like one, but something isn't quite right here, which is, we know that because we see this person is really utilizing their strength here to kind of rise above the situation. Their way of doing that is to exert some additional control, and when they do, it kind of shrinks their perspective a little bit. So we know that there's something not right here, but the energy isn't really moving around it. It's not, I don't know that there's a lot of kind of, I guess, information coming from the universe on this. Some of it is not meant to be known just yet, or it's not meant to be moved forward just yet. So that's kind of interesting. But what it feels like is a stalemate, or a situation where honestly things just can't move forward yet. So let's take a little bit closer of a look at this Hierophant, because this is the situation that is, you know, the first thing that I thought about it was, well, it's off script. You know, this is something that isn't following a traditional path, isn't following traditional guidance, may not have spiritual guidance in there, but I really detect there's potentially parents, there's family members, there are friends that are saying, hey, this is maybe something that you don't want to do, or that doesn't feel traditional, doesn't feel right somehow. There's definitely some pressure against it. So we've got this Queen of Wands, but this person is just being true to themselves, honestly. Whatever this is, where they've taken this defensive posture of not looking at the big picture and maybe retracting their emotion here, but this person, when they look deep down at what they really want, it's this non-traditional situation. And then we also have the Seven of Pentacles. So they've invested a fair amount in this fairly non-traditional situation as well. And I keep calling it a non-traditional situation, but it could just be, I think the original words that came out of my mouth were probably better because I didn't put them there. You know, it was just sort of what came to me along with the card, that it was something that was off script. And so that can mean a lot of things, but whatever that is, this person is fairly invested in it, and it is more true to them. They're more often than not here lately, the Queen of Wands in the reverse is removing those masks. I've noticed this in the last couple of readings. That's just how it keeps coming out. It's the removal of masks, but it's also sort of this gentle way of doing it. So, and that's very Queen of Wands in the reverse. So in the upright, she's passionate. She's coming at you. She's not afraid. There's a lot of good and bad things that kind of happen with that. But in the reverse, she could be a little bit more, the passion is not the first thing that you see nearly as much. And so that's how this feels. But she's also removing some masks. This is more genuine. This is the way this person feels. They are more interested in this non-traditional situation than they would be in something else. So then let's look at this retraction of the emotion, because that's really what that is. And it could just be a person pulling themselves out of an emotional situation. I don't get the sense that it is. This is a person who's still got a lot of curiosity in them. The Spirit of Wands. That's a Page of Wands. Or I'm sorry, Knight of Wands. And it's got a sense to it of moving forward in a very intense sort of fashion. But this person is working against that. They are utilizing their strength and their logic, and it's telling them to kind of, their strength goes toward their logic, and their logic goes toward removing that emotion. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. It's kind of a chain reaction, but those things are all very much related. Let's see if we can get another card on the, there it is. The Death card in reverse. And so the Death card in reverse is something that kind of refuses to end, or that they refuse to end. And in this case, it feels a little bit more like they don't have as much control over the situation. So maybe it is something that they would prefer to, a perspective that they would prefer to put an end to, or more than a perspective, it's this tendency they have to, they withdraw. This is a situation where a person, when they get triggered into this situation, they sort of withdraw. And so this is different. This situation feels a little bit different because they've got this non-traditional experience here that they, and I keep calling it that, this off-script experience here, that actually is a place that they want to invest and that they feel comfortable. But there is something very uncomfortable and awkward about the situation right now. They're having to really use their strength to get past it. And in order to, in so doing, that's part of what is narrowing their perspective and causing them to be that King of Blades in the reverse. So let's see, we've got for strength, it is being modified and clarified further by the Strength card. So we have the Strength card on top of the Strength card. The likelihood of it being really reinforced, the message being reinforced that way, is not especially high. We've also got the Reclamation card. Okay, so this is reclamation, but it's not happening. And I guess that, how do I put this energy into words? So they are doubling down, I guess is a good way to say, on the strength, but it's not really working. They are not having the success that they want to have, and they know it, but they aren't sure what else to do. Their natural response to a situation like this, where their strength is being called in, is to utilize that logic, but they're sort of, they're at a loss a little bit with the logic, and it's causing them to shut down a little bit. And it's not just shutting down in a let me remove myself from this situation sort of way, which, by the way, is a situation they don't necessarily want to remove themselves from, but they're retracting from it in an emotional way and pulling their energy out of it. And that's going to be, I don't know, it feels like it's going to be damaging to the situation here as they move through the rest of this new moon. This is a turn that someone is sort of taking during this period. So it feels like a relatively recent turn. Let's see a little bit more about this Knight of Blades in the reverse. And this is the Seven of Wands in the reverse, so they don't feel confident, but we know if they're kind of hiding off in the around, peering from around a rock, watching you as the situation plays out, that they're not necessarily feeling super confident. But this person isn't feeling confident. They aren't feeling protected. They aren't feeling like they really are good to be in this situation, but there's all the potential in the world. Boy, do they want to jump out. This is wild. This person wants to jump out from behind this rock and quit watching and start participating. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. As we see here, there's this conflict in them about the way that they're feeling about retracting this emotion. So really, really, they don't want to do that. But they're locked up in this. This is like a big fat Eight of Swords over here with the, you being in your own mental prison. But let's see what happens with this Ace of Blades, because this is what's supposed to be happening kind of in the nearest future here. We have the Six of Pentacles, which is a question about give and take energy, and whether or not it's going to be equal energy exchange, and then the other one is the Star. So there's a realization that that there's more to this situation, and it's not just going to be over because you've retracted from it. That's a pretty uncomfortable realization, I would say, for this person, and so that's something they definitely would want to obscure from themselves as far as a truth. It's going to reinforce a little bit this behavior here, but at this point, I think they've already seen, and we see it here and we see it here, they've already seen that this narrowing of their perspective is not doing them any favors. So we've got this feeling of stagnation over here, and this is why this pops out, as to be in this reading. It's the energy that wants to come forth, because it's sort of this gnawing, nagging, nagging isn't really the right word, but gnawing pain sort of feeling that they're having. And you might be experiencing a little bit of that too, especially depending on what role you play in this, because if they're retracting emotion and potentially love from you, you might be noticing that going away. You might also notice that they seem really solid about it, and like they seem like they've already made a decision here. But if it's about this, they have already made the decision to be logical. What they haven't made a decision about is what's supposed to happen over here. So I think, I wasn't planning to do an extended on this one. I just wanted to really quickly see what was happening with this new moon. But this is an interesting situation that we might want to ask a couple more questions about. So I think what we'll do is we'll ask a little bit more about kind of this situation here. So this is what's supposed to be happening next. And this is that obscuring the truth from themselves because they're figuring something out. And I want to understand a little bit more about what it is that they're figuring out, and maybe like where they're headed. This is that next step, but maybe if we take it a step farther, just to understand what is actually supposed to happen after that. And then of course my famous bridge question, well, how are they supposed to get there? What's in between where the situation sits now and where it's headed? So we'll take a look at that as we go into the extended. And so some of these extendeds have been getting pretty interesting as far as looking at being able to look into that next step and just kind of what does that bridge look like? And it's part of what's made me really enjoy asking that question. So I am going to go ahead and stop this here and move over to that extended. Thanks for joining me so far with this one. I would just say if this one resonated with you, please do remember to like and share and subscribe so that we can stick together and you can let me know what it is that you like. Otherwise, I'll either see you in the extended or I'll see you at a reading in the future. Have a great day.